Now let's dive into the front and the back panel. On the front panel, we have this really cool grille in the front of it. It kind of reminds me of like, cross section of an airplane wing. Very striking color here with kind of this neon greenish yellow. It's going to look cool in the rack for sure. Maybe a little bit bright, but that's okay. On the front, we can also see a couple USB ports and a little knob encoder to run this menu. Looks like this screen they're showing here has got IP addresses for a primary, secondary Dante network, as well as the IP address for controlling the unit. That's really nice to be able to jump into it and just have that information right there in the front. Looks like this is a back indicator, so presumably there's a lot more menu you can dive into there if you need it, but it's nice having those things right there on the front of the unit. Jumping over to the back, we have a few interesting things to talk about. First off, we have these locking EtherCon connectors for Dante. Like we talked about, Dante is just so ubiquitous in the live sound world right now. Almost every console you can imagine has got some way to get Dante in or out, whether it's just natively built in or you can get some sort of expansion card. So it's great to see them adopting such a widespread platform rather than doing something kind of like Waves and making it run over SoundGrid that's their own proprietary networking protocol. Additionally, we've got two power supplies, which I love. It's always really nice to have a redundant power supply when you're dealing with live sound. You got two power supply units in here. So if one fails or, the electricity on one circuit goes down, you've still got the other one and you should be good to go. We also have MIDI in, out, and through, which I'm sure you'll be able to, configure this with other devices, maybe, tap tempo, who knows? I'm sure with MIDI, the possibilities there are endless. Now, this is interesting. There's this USB bay. So it looks like we have thumb screws on the back of here that we can open up. I'm guessing this is for third-party authentication devices like an iLock or some other USB authenticator. So if you got plugins that run those, you can just plug it in and this will, keep it contained on the inside so you don't have like an iLock or like other USB dongle just like hanging out where it could get damaged. So that's a really nice thing they've thought of. Okay, tech specs. We're going to go deeper in this. We're going to jump into this other documentation with a little more going on here. So they've got the CPU listed as the Intel Alder Lake i9. That is a more robust CPU than what Waves is running. So I think that's a really good sign that we're going to be able to do a lot of processing with this platform. Like we talked about, I've got two EtherCon running Dante. Dante, it's got redundant network, it's got clock leader support, and the minimum network latency is 1 millisecond. Speaking of latency, they claim down here on their data pipeline that latency goes down to 0.67 milliseconds. So presumably this 0.67 plus the 1 millisecond of minimum network latency would be the minimum latency that you'd incur with this system. So that's really, really fast, imperceptibly fast. I think that should work great for nearly anything. Now the issue here is what is the latency that's going to go beyond this because of more intense plugins. As you get into more robust processing, a lot of times the latency will extend upwards, way beyond, 0.67 milliseconds. So it's definitely going to go up from here. We're just gonna have to see what happens with that. I'm sure there'll be some plugins that are just too intensive that we're not going to be able to use. That's okay. Still opens up a lot of stuff for us. And I mean, frankly, a lot of Waves plugins are pretty intense and their system still handles that. So I have no doubt that this will be able to do the same thing. Like we talked about, it's compatible with all Windows 10 VST3 plugins, which is pretty much every plugin that can be installed and licensed offline. That's kind of a key thing. There are some plugins that have that need an internet connection to run. Not most of them by any means, but there are a few here and there I know of that are going to want to talk online to their server. So it's not gonna be able to run those. That is definitely a limitation. Maybe they'll address that in the future. But for right now, it's something that can be licensed and installed offline. Yeah, we talked about it's a 2U chassis, so nice, small, compact. It's got a 2-year warranty, so I like that a lot too. Now, jumping into some FAQs. When do we get this thing? Q1 of 2024 is the expected release date. So I think you can sign up to kind of learn more about it when it gets released. So that's pretty soon. And definitely, reach out to your favorite local integrator and see if they can get their hands on this and get in line for it. Then let's see. Okay, so what do we need to get started with the Transform Engine? You'll need, obviously, the Transform Engine itself, one or more Dante-enabled devices to patch the engine into. So this is where it gets real interesting. Dante is so flexible in its routing that you could be processing this at different points in your Dante network, presumably, and have that processing on different devices, different things, anything you can run into it and run out of it. That's where you'd be able to have that Dante processing or processing from the Transform Engine. So the options here are really limitless. It's not just oh, I can only run it on this one console. No, theoretically, anything you can run Dante in, you could process with this. So that's really, really cool. And then lastly, you'll need a computer to run the control software, Windows 10 upwards, or Mac OS 11 and up. Now, here we go. How many plugins can I run? They answered that question with a question, how long is a piece of string? Who knows? No two plugins are alike, so it's really going to depend on the DSP load that's presented by each plugin. They don't limit the number of plugins you can run, which is awesome. It's not some intrinsic limit. They're just opening it up. You can do what you want to. When you run out of power, you're running out of power, but you can go up until that point. I am very excited to see their benchmarks as they come through. Hopefully that'll give us some more information about what we can really expect to run. But they're saying they're supporting 64 channels at 96K, which is great. Saying that means they're expecting you can run, a very robust and full show with this, with 64 channels. So that, certainly makes it seem like they're going to be in a really good spot for running a lot of processing with this. All right, so that's our overview of the new Transform Engine from Fourier Audio. If you like this video, you want to see more stuff like this, go ahead, leave a like. Subscribe to the channel, really helps us out. But now I want to hear from you. Are you excited about this Transform Engine? Or are you just perfectly content with Waves? You don't need any of this stuff? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to talk about it. I'd love to hear what you think and whether you think you'd buy this for your church.